82% of team members feel misunderstood or undervalued. So this is exactly where I like to be, teaching, communicating, helping others, realizing their aspirations. I'm so excited about shattering the glittering image and uncovering the truth about you.
Welcome back to the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show here on YouTube. I'm Jerry Howard, your host, your certified jail inspector, and your leadership expert. And if you don't know what a jail inspector is, tune into our previous episodes. You're going to love finding out all the antics and all the debauchery that led to that experience and what it takes to become a jail inspector. But here at the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show, we sit at the intersection of faith, leadership, and business. And to us, those are as inseparable as Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So today, I'm very excited because we have an amazing guest. And actually, this guest is very unique to this show because the content that we teach in here is all born out of a company that was founded by the one and only and co-founded, I should say, by Jeremie Kubicek and Steve Cochran. Today, we have Jeremie Kubicek with us. I'm just going to read a couple of things about him because this guy has done so much in his life that we couldn't probably cover it all. But Jeremie Kubicek is a powerful communicator, serial entrepreneur, and content builder, as you've probably seen if you've been tuning in. He creates content used by some of the most influential leaders in the world and used all over the globe. He's authored The 100X Leader, 5 Voices, 5 Gears, and a national bestseller called Making Your Leadership Come Alive. That's Making Your Leadership Come Alive. And also the Peace Index. That's the newest one that was released last fall. That is a game changer, folks. If you haven't read it, you need to pick up. It's a quick read, but it is a game changer. And I've already had clients of mine give me that same insight. They've changed their whole outlook towards how to manage their own peace. Jeremie's also the co-founder of Giant, a company that certifies coaches and consultants that serve companies and their employees. Jeremie has started over 20 companies, like I said, while living in Oklahoma City, Moscow, Atlanta, and London. So again, it's my pleasure to welcome Jeremie Kubicek here to the Intrepid Impact Leadership Channel. Jeremie, thanks so much for joining us here, man. Love having you on the show.
Jerry, fired up. Let's go, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to hang with you. I'm excited to encourage some people.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for the chance.
Yeah, man. That is wonderful because I have to say, and I don't mind telling the audience this, I have always found the leaders at Giant HQ is what we call them, the leaders at Giant HQ to be the most friendly and welcoming individuals. Jeremie is, as one of the co-founders, of course, sets that culture. And if you've tuned in before, you know that leaders define culture, and Jeremie's one of the ones who taught me that. So Jeremie, love for the audience to get more of your background and just maybe hear a little bit of your story there.
Yeah, so I started out very, very young as a 20-something. Had a professor in college, and he said, Jeremie, you're an entrepreneur. What if you use entrepreneurship for good? What would it look like for you to take business as a platform for impact? And I was like, you mean I can? I can let the world fund me to influence it. And that became a mantra of mine early on. Let the world pay me to influence it, not raise money to go influence people. And I started on a journey. I moved to Russia, started a few companies in Moscow in the early 90s, had some crazy experiences. That's where my bestseller came from. People like to hear about mafia or car bombs or coup attempts. I was in all of those things and or experienced all of those things. I wasn't in the mafia. So I started out early in kind of a journey of how do you use platforms for good? How do you actually transform people? And so I've just lived around the globe. I've lived in lots of places. And I think for me, the whole game has been, how do you actually help people step into their identity, learn their superpowers, and get activated in who they're designed to be? And that's pretty much what I am. I'm an activator, and I like to activate people to their calling. But to do that, there's a lot of freedom that has to happen. There's a lot of liberation that has to take place in a person's life.
Yeah. And folks, I'll tell you, I have been activated. In fact, if it weren't for Giant, I actually don't necessarily know exactly how influential my consultancy would be. The show wouldn't exist. When I came across these tools that Jeremie and Steve and their entire team at Giant HQ were developing, that was the missing link to what I was doing in my own consultancy. At the time, I was helping business owners grow and scale their businesses, but I didn't have this language of leadership. But I did observe that I spent more of my time teaching them leadership than I did in the versus the actual mechanics of business. And so, love having you on the show. Love that diversity of background and thought that you bring to the leadership and business community. And with that said, I'd love for the audience to know more, Jeremie, about what you're most passionate about. I think you touched on it at the very end there, but if you could elaborate, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think I'm most passionate about individuals stepping into their identity and becoming secure in who that is. All right. So now, what does that mean? So I'm going to give it from a faith perspective, and then I'll play it out into practicality. So for me, I ask questions a lot of times, and I don't do this in the secular space in a lot of cases, but I'll ask them, are you a sinner or a son, or a son or a daughter? You can only give me one answer. And that, a lot of people have a hard time with that. I'm like, well, but I'm a sinner who is a son. I'm like, no, you can only give me one. And then I flip the question. I go, well, who does God see you to be? And God sees me to be a son, or a daughter. I'm like, okay, there's your answer. That's your identity. And if you once you figure out that identity, you actually can start walking in freedom. And for me personally, I've even just like anyone else, I've dealt with past and things you did in the past and who you are and all these things but that's not my identity, because I believe God's present, future. Everything is present and future. The past is the past. There's new mercies every morning. So therefore, from a perspective of your identity, it's like, no, I am a son of the Most High God because of Jesus. And that becomes the way that I deal with my identity. I'm not a sinner. I don't have a sin nature anymore. The sin nature has been taken from me because of Jesus. I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I live. I have a sin habit.
That's right.
So when I figure out that I have a sin habit, it's different than a sin nature. And I find so many Christians flog themselves. And the enemy, his number one partner is typically you. Because he wants to partner with you to sabotage yourself. He wants to steal, kill, and destroy. So what are the things that are stealing, killing, and destroying you? Well, that's what the enemy wants to spend his time. He wants to partner with you to steal joy, kill hope, destroy any momentum, and hold you back into this. Yep, look at you. Yep, you're just a horrible person. Yep, you're an imposter. All those things that create negative self-doubt, and they lead to this domination over ourselves. And liberation is actually high support and high challenge. High support, a lot of grace, a lot of truth. So I've been practicing liberating myself. I've been practicing partnering with the Holy Spirit to liberate myself. To go, look, I'm a freedom fighter. I fight for the highest possible good. I am a son of the Most High God by the blood of Jesus. I have a sin habit. I need to be cognizant of it, but I'm not controlled from the past. So the past is not affecting the way I show up today, and it's not affecting the way I show up tomorrow. That is what I am most passionate about.
I love it. That's great. And I've experienced that same thing too. In fact, in most of the personality assessments I've had over the years, I show up as an extrovert. In that, it was the giant tools and particularly predictive leadership behaviors that I learned that I'm actually an introvert. When I began scheduling that recharge time that introverts need, I realized that, hey, I'm missing out on showing up as the individual that God originally called me to be. And like I told you in previous episodes, the creative connector pioneer sees the future of people and helps them get there. Not unlike what Jeremie's talking about here, the giant tools and the Word of God combined together really were the catalyst for the show, folks. And if you haven't seen our previous episodes, we go through all those personalities with the 5 leadership voices. So Jeremie, I'm really glad you touched on that. And I'd love to hear more about how that translates into the business world.
Yeah, so when you know who you are, then you can step into your role without past baggage. See, a lot of people come to work every day in shame to who they are, and they become somebody that they don't love. So then they don't love themselves. When they don't love themselves, it's hard to love other people. When you dominate yourself, you bring domination with you, typically to everyone you are with. And then you rationalize it. Well, they're just a jerk. They're just an idiot. That's just how it is. And so, what happens then is then you then show up as a person that people don't want to be around. They have to be around.
Yeah.
Because they need the job.
I think I rationalized something this morning. Sorry to interrupt. I'm pretty sure I rationalized something this morning. I'm just putting it out there. You're so right, man. And I think everybody listening knows that as well. Keep going, though.
Well, so then if you become somebody that people have to follow, not want to follow, then they become compliant, not engaged.
Yeah.
And then if they're not engaged, then they're not giving their best effort, which then affects the team that you're leading, which then ultimately affects the bottom line.
Yeah.
Meaning that people leave jobs not because of the company as much as the boss.
Yeah.
Well, the same is true. People will work harder for the boss more than the company. So if they're on a team that they love, they'll work really hard, even if they don't revere the company.
Absolutely.
And so the team leader is the key to an organization's success. As a team leader goes, so goes the organization. How many team leaders you have, if they're not healthy, then they're like an asthmatic Sherpa on the mountain, on Mount Everest. No one wants to follow you. So that's is the problem with most teams, is that they're full of team leaders, or most organizations, they're full of team leaders that people don't want to follow, but they have to follow.
Yeah. And so I'll repeat what they said. We've referenced the Sherpa metaphor on the show before, but thinking about climbing Mount Everest, you can't get up there without a guide. The guide is the Sherpa. And thinking about the altitude and the air and the oxygen level out there, what he said was no one wants to follow an asthmatic Sherpa. So if you can think about having asthma and trying to lead others up Mount Everest, you can imagine what Jeremie's talking about here. That's an excellent metaphor, and I love it to this day. So speaking of the tools, those things that you mentioned, and even Giant in general, and going all the way back to maybe your earliest days as a consultant or speaker, what do you think is your biggest aha from deploying the tools in various organizations?
Yeah, so 21st century leadership and learning is visual. And I used to, years ago, I used to own John Maxwell's assets. I ran the LeaderCast brand. Like, we started the Catalyst, we built the Catalyst conferences up, started LeaderCast, all this content. And all the content was good, but I would say the majority of it was about climbing, not leading. A lot about potential, be awaken the giant within, be somebody you can. It's like all about climbing. Very little was about leadership. And the other part was it was butts and seats selling books. That was the philosophy. Let's get as many people as we can and sell them books. And then from the books, well, people don't read anymore like that.
That's so
right?
true.
And so we use visual tools. So the visual nature is a mirror. And so I'm going to ask you a question, Jerry. Does a mirror judge?
No.
No, it just reflects reality. It's not judging.
That's right.
It's just showing you reality. The tools of Giant are mirrors. We put a mirror in front and go, hey, now the mirror is the bad guy. So I can go, hey, Jerry, here's a tool. It's called the Sport Challenge Matrix. It's high sport, low sport, high challenge, low challenge. Here's where I am with my wife. Where are you with your wife? Now I've just shown you broccoli in my teeth. I abdicate to my wife sometimes. But I'll liberate too. I go back and forth, abdication, liberation. How about you? Now that tool is a mirror. It gives you the chance to actually do the work. So self-awareness needs tools, because what happens is a lot of times, a lot of leaders are subjective. They'll say things like, hey, Jerry, I just need you to step it up, man. Okay. From a leadership perspective, I want to see you get to the next level. I need you to push a little harder. Just need you to step it up. Let's go. And you're like, yeah, thanks, coach.
Right.
What did that mean? I don't know what that meant. But if I said, hey, Jerry, remember the Sport Challenge Matrix? Remember, we're looking in the mirror. I'm noticing that you're bringing lots of challenge, but very little support.
Yeah.
So it's coming across as domination. I don't know if you're aware of that, but let's make sure that we bring a little bit more support.
Yeah.
Now I've made it objective, and objective language is the key to self-awareness. And most people don't do that very well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the support challenge matrix is riveting. And in fact, if you're in the Christian community, you've heard, well, make sure the truth doesn't outrun love, right? Make sure you wrap the truth in love. Others I've heard velvet covered brick, right? So when you bring that challenge, like, son, I want you to try your best on the football team. My son plays football. Well, if you don't if you don't buy the pads or take them to practice or provide a means of getting there, then you're not bringing appropriate support. Well, what if you were an outlet for him too? You know, in our previous show, we talked about athletic suicide as an I wouldn't call it an epidemic yet, but it could certainly be one, especially NCAA athletes. They've had a spike recently in suicides. And when we think about the support challenge matrix, what we can see in that is way too much challenge, way too much truth, as people might say in the Christian community, and not enough support or not enough love. As far as I can tell, God spells love the same way kids do, and that's Time. If you're not spending time, whether it's formal or informal, with your family, your team members, or whomever, then I don't believe you have the right to bring the challenge, to be honest with you.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So shattering the glittering image. You know, we love to do that here on the Intrepid Impact Show. Shattering the glittering image. Jeremie, can you tell us a story? Maybe one of the more humbling experiences you've had in your life. I think it's always important for leaders at your level to be able to share that, not only to shatter the glittering image, but to let others know. You can talk about your jail inspecting if you want. It's not nobody cares. But I'd love for them to see that from you as well.
All right, I'm gonna give you a lighthearted one and then a deeper one.
Nice.
The first one was college. When you think you can do anything and you're like get invited to be a DJ, I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally do it. I was the worst DJ because I was playing music only I wanted, and they wanted like AC/DC, and you're like, no, I don't have that. I have this cool music. But my point in that was sometimes it would get me in trouble to think, oh, I can figure it out, and then it has ramifications for that. So that's been a lot of my world is like, oh, sure, I can do it, and I'll say yes to things I shouldn't say yes to.
That's good.
But bigger than that, I would say, you know, a shattering image for me would be when I was running the Maxwell businesses. It was pride would be where I'm going. It's this idea of almost defensiveness and pride. And just how, if I could go back and redo some things, I would go back and do it. And I've spent a lot of time. I don't harbor anything in resentment, or I've asked for forgiveness and forgiven people for past things. But there's probably a part of me I look back and go, I wish I had been a little bit more open to not proving myself. Everything I've done has been, I started too young. I was 20 years old, 21 in Russia, starting businesses. By the time I was 30, I had done a lot of acquisitions and private equity. I had done .coms, blah, blah, blah. But pride entered in, and the pride was trying to be somebody. And that is always, pride goes before the fall. And so if I go back and go, my biggest frustrations are defensiveness, where I was trying to prove that I belong in that role at that age. And I was always proving myself to older people. And when you prove yourself, it proves that maybe you shouldn't have been in those positions, or maybe it was too early. And so that's probably my thing I'd want to share, is that I've had a tendency to be defensive. I still have a tendency, but I work on it a lot more than maybe ever before.
I get it. Folks, if you tuned in before, you know I used to run small post-acute rehab hospitals. And I can tell you, I was like 30-something, young 33, 5, or something like that when I started. So everybody in the room was older than me. So talk about trying to prove yourself. Didn't know a thing about running hospitals. Of course, you sit in the boardroom and you learn all this stuff for 6 weeks or whatever. But trying to prove myself, it just wasn't happening, man. There's no way I can prove to the director of nursing that's been in nursing for 40 years that I was going to have anything substantial to add to that. So I can certainly identify with that, and that's an excellent point. Excellent point. And so with leaders, though, what What's the most common challenge you see them overcoming? Is it proving themselves, or what do you think?
I think well, I don't know if it's one of
Yeah.
slowing down to speed up. The One of my favorite verses is Mark 4:19, and it's a warning verse, but the cares of the world, a delight in riches, the desire for other things, enter in, choke the truth, and prove you're unfruitful. That's basically my interpretation of that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfruitful living. Well, the issue with leaders is that they wake up, if they're waking up accidental, meaning they just kind of wake up to go, oh, it's another day, and they go into their work, then their work is mainly making donuts. It's
Oh, yeah.
who's the got to make the donuts, right? They got to do the work. The clients got to do this report. Got to do all of these ancillary things. Then they look at their people as a liability, as a nuisance, and they're not. They need to slow down to speed up. What I mean is slow down, look at your team. Does your team know that you're for them? Do they think that you're for yourself, or are you against them? If they think that you're against them, they're going to put walls up. If they think that you're for yourself, they're going to put walls up. If they know that you're for them, they'll listen to you. But then know your team to lead your team. So the unfruitful living, the reason I bring up that verse is that the distractions of all the external things create unfruitful spiritual living. In the same way, making the donuts, doing reports, doing all the external things cause you to not pour into your people and turn your people into an asset. If you turn your people into an asset and create a system for them to grow, that's like turning the pilot light on inside of them. You don't have to light a fire underneath the people. They come to work alive. The more alive they are, the more healthy they are, the more fruitful they are, the more healthy and easy it is for you.
Yeah.
So I find that most leaders are in the rat race. They're just like a hamster wheel. They're just spinning every day, putting out fires, having to hire someone because they got a turnover factory. Slow down.
That's so true.
Figure it out, reset, and then start running. And slow down to speed it up.
That's good. That's good. And folks, that's one of the verticals we operate in too, is the healthcare space. And you said it best. You're the turnover factory, right? Why are you the turnover factory? Well, if you're not creating a culture, a healthy culture, because again, like you said, leaders define culture. So if you're the problem and you don't know what you look like on the other side of yourself, then you're not going to ever stop the turnover wheel. So like you said, slow down to speed up. In fact, a friend of mine, he was a Navy SEAL for a number of years. He started a physical training program called SEAL Team PT. And he used to tell us, he goes, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So when you think about the military and shooting, especially in the Marine Corps, we do a lot of that. You have to slow down to speed up. You have to slow down to speed up. And as leaders, that's an excellent, excellent piece of guidance. So, Jeremie, thanks for that. And we talked about faith before. When we think about Giant HQ, and of course, we're at Faith Leadership and Business here on the show. So, how does faith play a role in your actual business, the Giant business?
Yeah. So I mean, Giant itself stands. We have a big G and a little I. It stands for David, not Goliath. It stands for humility, not pride. And that all came from my own journey. I started the company in 2002, actually. I started Giant, the brand, in 2002. Giant Worldwide started in 2013, and I partnered with Steve on that part. But we used to have 9 different companies of Giant, and we were doing all these different businesses and things around the world, and I consolidated all of it. But the idea is basically it's about humility, that the original sin was pride. And Satan trying to be somebody. He's trying to be like God. And then he goes to the Garden of Eden, and what does he say? Hey, wouldn't you like to be like God?
Yeah.
And so we fell for the same sin. And that, in essence, Giant is humility-based leadership. Now, we're not it's not a Christian company. in that it's not listed as like, hey, a Christian company. It is a business that works with anyone. So any company around the world can use Giant to help their people. But our heartbeat is that people might actually deal with their pride and step into humility. You know, I have my own personal views of like, I can get into it if you wanted to, but you know, Jesus I didn't see him convert anyone. I've read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John anywhere. And I can't see him convert anyone from a religion to a religion. It was actually a process of transformation.
Yeah.
Process of humility where the flag gives up of, I give up, I'm not God. You are God. And you know, what he did with Nicodemus to the Pharisees, and you have to be reborn. You have to think about the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of man. And the kingdom of man the culture is pride. In the kingdom of heaven, the culture is humility. And so Jesus said, I only do what the Father tells me to do. That's humility. Pride is, I'm the man. Look at me. I've got my mountain. I climbed the mountain. Look at my castle up on this mountain. And it's just an interesting way. So when you start getting into understanding that the dichotomy of pride versus humility, it really, really changes the game.
That's so true. And I was recently talking to someone about evangelism, and what I love about the Giant Toolkit is it gives you a way of providing influence, not only in your own organization, but outside that. Like, you know, I teach a leadership class at my church using the tools, but then I give them the scripture that I believe goes along with the concept of the tool. And a lot of that comes from the stuff you've done, but in other research that I've done as well. And it's fascinating to me because if you use the tools, if you use that language of leadership, then you actually become that person. And what I see in the New Testament is Jesus made a friend, then he made a disciple, and then he made a leader worth following. And it's in that order with the 3, the 9, the 72, etc. So you have the opportunity to do that. So I believe that I don't want to criticize somebody else's method, but I don't mind saying that to me, evangelism is not about a soul winning check in the box type of thing. It's about providing that relationship or that resource, and then relationship. And now you've got somebody who wants to do the same thing you're doing, or at least wants to be that leader worth following. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's pivotal for me personally. As you can see, I'm getting pretty excited about it. How does do you see in Giant that humility drop to the bottom line, and any kind of a metric that the business owners that watch the show can kind of follow, or what do you think?
So, I mean, if you think about good business, it's all about trust and influence. It's one of those, do I believe you?
Yeah.
Do I trust you? Do I? It's really hard because it depends on the type of business. I know there's some people who are really good business people in a really bad sector or a hard sector. So you think, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so
I was in construction, man. Let me tell you what, that's tough.
So there's a certain dynamic. So I don't want to just make a statement, but here's what I do know. If you know, like, I used to work with a private equity group, and this group allowed and were okay with some not so good business practices. Let's just say they were a little bit shady. And I found out about it, and I left the company because of, bribes or different things that were happening. Well, that's not a practice that works. It's not going to produce the right culture of people. You're not going to gather. If you do the right things, if you're influencing people, there's something called referrals. There's something called, oh my gosh, these guys are legit.
Yes.
And you know the groups that it's like this. Here's a better way to say it. Like a movie that comes out. If a movie that's coming out is being pumped up way ahead of time, what that means the movie's not very good, because they're doing all the marketing on the front end because they only have one shot for that first weekend because no one's going to talk about it.
That's horrible.
And so if you see a lot of hype on a movie that's not by Spielberg or, you know, Star Wars, then it's, or a Marvel, outside of those, then you're going to probably not want to go see the movie. But have you noticed the movies that everyone starts talking about? Oh my gosh, it's so good, you got to go see it. And then week after week after week, it becomes, then it builds and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Then that's the same with leadership. If you have to hype yourself up and do a lot of promo and tell people how great you are, then you're probably not that strong of a leader. But if you're doing the right things day in and day out, it's going to then eventually you'll feel it, you'll see it in referrals.
That's good. And you heard it, folks. I'm repeating what he said. Good business is represented by the referrals you get. And I tell the salespeople we've had at our companies over and over again, the sale doesn't end until you get a referral, because that's when you really know. Or a 5-star review, that's a great indicator as well. Maybe it's a 5-star review you didn't have to ask for. That's another good one. Love it. That's great. And so in your sphere so far, I've got so the Peace Index was a book that came out last fall, and you just told me that you wrapped up another one. Would you care to share a little bit more about the latest book?
Yeah. So I have a book a year basically with Wiley. So the next book, I'm doing this one with Steve. So Steve and I will do we've done this one's called the Communication Code. So this is one of our key tenets, one of our key lenses in the giant tools. So we have all this content, and we can go as deep as we want to go. Like the Peace Index was just one little tool.
Yeah.
But I just made it and expanded it so people could play with it a lot more. The communication code is a lot more foundational. It's actually a system. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a system. There's 5 code words. When you figure out the code words, they unlock people. And if you do it right, it will expedite your relationships. It will take your relationships deeper if you understand how and when to use these code words. So that's Communication Code. It comes out in October of 2023.
Good deal. Good deal. So he mentioned the Peace Index. I want to go back to that real quick too, because in all transparency, when I first learned the tool, I felt like it was too subjective in the sense that you can just pull a number out of a hat. But when I learned the Peace Index, like reading the book, and this is what I want to tell you, like I said, the Peace Index is a quick read, but I've been giving them out as gifts. Like when I do a speaking thing, it's like a door prize type of thing. But the Peace Index breaks it down in a very quantitative way, so you can actually measure Peace Index week to week. You can measure it moment to moment. It seemed subjective to me, but it became a powerful force in my personal life. And again, it's a quick read. And as far as communication goes, does it have that same kind of flavor to it, where it's a little more of a quantitative type of process, you said, than
yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more like 5 voices in that regard, and then you kind of learn. And so it's probably more involved than the Peace Index, but it goes back to your past. It helps you deal with your past. And we talk about the relational plaque that gets built up, and based on your history, and then we get into the actual code words, and we kind of codify what does celebration really mean, what does clarification really mean, how do you actually do it. So it's a real, really practical, like all of our books, but real meaty as well. And so we just finished it. I just finished the edits from Steve, and I finished writing it and gave it to the publisher on Friday. And so that's kind of nice to have that done and move on.
You blazed through that. That's fantastic.
35 days. So
wow.
But the thing is, when you live it, it's like we've been living these tools forever. Yeah. It's, I have some other books I've written that haven't come out yet that took me a lot longer because it's brand new thought. So anyway.
That's cool, man. It's cool. Very excited. So cannot finish or wrap up the episode without talking about 6 Summers. Been very impressed with 6 Summers. Tell the audience a little bit about that. I know Will's gonna appreciate it.
My son, Will, he's 23 and just got married, and he's just a stud kid. He was a decathlete at the University of Oklahoma, and he graduated. He said, "Dad, I know what I want to do. I'd like to start a business with you." And we taught our kids at 15. each had to have their own company at the age of 15. And he said, I want to do what you did for me and my sisters. I want to package that and sell that to dads. And I'm like, all right, let's take a look at it. We spent a few months doing it, and it literally went, we had a soft launch in January. Hard launch has actually happened in May now, where we've just finally got all of it up and running. And basically what it is I took my kids through from the age of 10 to 18, a apprenticeship process where I used the tools on my kids. We learned their personality. They learned the 5 gears. They went through Know Yourself, Lead Yourself, Sport Challenge Matrix, all the tools. We learned that our daughter was a creative, and our son is a guardian, and our youngest is a nurturer. And we started doing work with my wife and I, and we started understanding our kids. And so we packaged it. It's unbelievably affordable. It's really cheap for dads. They sign it on, and then we help them plan their summers. They go through a base camp where they have to learn the tools for themselves. They have to do a little 5 video sessions with their spouse, and then they have 5 sessions to go with their kids. And then they create badges, and the badges would be like, we're going to do a steak off, and they're going to teach their kids how to grill. We're going to go on, there's adventure trips you go on. You do concert swaps. Everything from leadership, adventure, survival, relationships, all these different categories of badges. And then you plan your summer, and you basically maximize your summers or at least get 6 good summers in of intentionality. And it lasts all year, but it starts in the summer. So it's 6summers.com. Pretty simple, just 6summers.com. And love to have any of you sign up and join.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I've met Will. He is an amazing individual. You can tell. I mean, it's the best compliment, I think, as a parent when somebody wants to work with their mom or dad in a business venture. So if you've got that going on, that's great. I have the audience knows, but I have one child in college, one in high school. He's finishing up his junior year, but then 2 in elementary school. So 4th and 5th grade. So my 6 summers is approaching quickly, and I'm very excited, and will 100% be a participant in 6 summers. That's fantastic, man. That's so cool. I won't mind saying that every summer I make my kids do a thing. Maybe it's write a speech or something like that. Right? I've been doing this for years. One year I made them create a business, and we formed LLCs with the state corporation commission in there, and their goal was, I said, create a thing where you don't have to manage it. It makes money. And that was all I told them, and they came up with some pretty cool ideas. So I love that Will is taking that to the next level, man. That's cool. Good for you. So Jeremie, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Do you have any parting words for the viewers?
Yeah, I just encourage you. It's like when you give yourself away, when you learn how to be healthy yourself and liberate yourself, it's so satisfying. So, but what that means is you have to wake up every morning and call yourself up and into who you are. I do it for myself. I'll wake myself up sometimes, and I'll tell God who He is for me that day, and it kind of changes every day. And then I'll remind myself, Jeremie, you're a freedom fighter, you're a liberator, you're a son of the Most High God. And I step into my identity. And when you do that and you liberate yourself, and you're not constantly flogging yourself from the past,
that's good.
Then you have freedom. And the freedom is so powerful, and that freedom brings freedom to other people. So liberate yourself, get really healthy, and it's just a better way to live.
That's good. Folks, you've heard trust and influence creates referrals in your business. We've got humility. What else did I write down? Oh, visual tools in the 21st century. Can't forget that. 6 Summers. 6summers.com. I believe that's the right address. Is that right? 6summers.com. Yep. Check out 6summers.com. And in your business, you have to create a system for growth. That's so true. And Giant creates a system for not only my business and its growth, but also my clients. And so you can adopt the same thing here. Jeremie, wonderful having you on today. Really appreciate it. How can our viewers find you best? What's your preference?
Yeah, and you may have to put this in your notes, but JeremieKubicek.com, because people spell it wrong all the time. But it's JEREMIE.
Yeah.
KUBICEK. So JeremieKubicek.com, and I speak and I serve and I encourage them. I partner with our guides. I partner with Jerry. He's a great partner. I partner with people like him around the world, and then just serving CEOs and serving teams and organizations. And so really fun to be with you.
Oh, likewise, man. Thanks so much for your time today, folks. If you haven't checked out anything from Jeremie Kubicek, you need to. We've got the books. We've got the Giant Toolkit. You've got a number of opportunities to really get in. And I can tell you personally, I've been to a number of Giant retreats, giant conferences, and they really practice what they preach. The whole environment is about serving us as individuals. I almost don't even know how to react to that because they're so good at making us feel welcome and making us really learn how to practice what we preach. So, Jeremie, again, great having you on the show, man. Folks, this has been another episode of the Intrepid Impact Leadership Show here on YouTube. And if you're tuning in on the podcast, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
82% of team members feel misunderstood or undervalued. So this is exactly where I like to be, teaching, communicating, helping others, realizing their aspirations. I'm so excited about shattering the glittering image and uncovering the truth about you.